Most people think pressure starts on the first tee. Mine starts in the parking lot. There have been days where my heart started racing before I even got my clubs out of the trunk. Days where my hands shook so much I could barely tee up the ball. Not because I didn't know how to play, but because I was so afraid my anxiety would take over and just incapacitate me. I could do nothing. And here's the crazy part: I'm a mental performance coach. People hire me to help them perform under pressure. And there are still days where pressure beats me. I'm going to tell you something that honestly makes me uncomfortable to say. Everything you're about to watch could fail. It could not turn out. I might never qualify for a big level tournament like PGA Tour, the USAM. And more importantly than that, I might never actually play to what I know I'm capable of playing. If that's what happens, you're going to see it. Because this channel isn't about convincing you I'm a great golfer. It's actually about answering a question I've been asking myself for almost half my life now. Can I overcome this emotional battle and be who I want to be who I dream to be? Maybe help you dream who you want to be. And I have a lot of people, they have this idea that confidence is it's something that you're born with or you're not. And I don't believe that anymore. I think confidence is built. But the problem is most of us don't know what we're actually building. We chase good rounds, good feelings, validation, either from yourself or other people, results. And when those disappear, our confidence disappears right along with them. I have lived that story big time. And when I was younger, I thought if I could just fix my swing, maybe there's just this one move that if I finally got, everything would be magic and I'd be who I was going to be. And I'd finally become the golfer I knew I could be. I took thousands and thousands of videos, but more videos than I've seen anyone ever take of themselves, and just to see if I'd find it. And guess what? I found it. Just kidding. Of course, I didn't find it. I would blame my driver, my putting, my fitness. It was always something that's going wrong. And eventually, I realized none of those things were holding me back. My mind was. It's cliche, the 6 inches between your ears, but it truly was. And before you think, oh, here's another mental game guy blaming everything on mental game, nothing else matters. For sure not. The mental game is not magic. It doesn't replace skill. You still have to put in the work. You still have to hit thousands of golf balls or whatever your profession or your hobby or your passion is. You have to practice. You have to do those things. You have to be technically sound for you. But once everyone reaches a certain level, the difference isn't who's got the prettiest swing. It's who can actually swing it freely when it matters, or who believes they get to win. Like, am I good enough? Am I worthy enough to win? And that's where I kept falling apart. I didn't grow up as some golf prodigy. I actually didn't start taking golf seriously until my junior year in high school, and most of the guys I was competing against at that point in college they've been playing since they were like 6 or 7 years old, and I was behind. But I loved improving, and every week I felt like I was getting better and better. And by my senior year, I actually won like a reasonable amount of tournaments. So big fish in a small pond, town of Reno. But golf became the thing that I couldn't stop thinking about. So after high school, I made that decision that sounded a little crazy. My parents certainly didn't like it, but instead of going to college, I took a gap year. And every day became about getting better and better and practice, play, repeat over and over. And eventually, it paid off. I actually earned a scholarship to play at my hometown school, University of Nevada. I honestly thought, yes, this is where my dream begins. I remember hugging my dad at the airport as I got a call from the coach, and it was like at that point it was the best point of my life, and it ended up becoming the biggest struggle of my life. Ironically enough, not because I wasn't good enough, but because my mind started to overrun my golf game. It took over me, and it took me years to understand why. If you had asked me during college what was wrong with my golf game, well, I would have given you 1,000 answers. It was either, my takeaway, my follow through. Maybe I needed to drive it better, short game, experience, lack of experience. And looking back, I don't think any of those things were the real problem. The real problem was I had no idea what pressure was doing to me. I had no idea what kind of pressure I was putting on myself. And when I got to Nevada, I felt like I had finally made it. I was on a Division 1 golf team. I couldn't wait to compete. I was going to play with really, really good players from around the country, around the world, actually. And almost immediately, I started feeling something I hadn't quite experienced before. I didn't just want to play well. I felt like I had to play well. I had every qualifying round felt like an audition. Even though I was already on the team, it was like every practice someone was like, is he good enough to be here, or should he make the top five? And I had to constantly prove myself worthy while feeling completely unworthy. And somewhere along the way, golf stopped being a game, it stopped being fun, and it became a test, a life test of, are you good enough? And the strange thing is, if you watch me practice, you'd be like, oh, he's doing great. His swing looks good. He might have some good scores in practice. And even I had those days that everyone has, where like, oh, wow, I can actually hit good shots and I might be able to compete here. And then qualifying would start, name and score visible for everyone to see. Coach would be watching and players watching. And suddenly I wasn't playing golf anymore. I was trying not to fail, and I had to prove. And those are two completely different things. And as you and I both know, no one can play well like that. I started actually getting consumed with anxiety, and people, who haven't experienced performance anxiety usually think it's just being nervous, and everybody gets nervous. And I promise you, and for those of you watching, anxiety is much worse than that, or panic attacks. And, I wish I was handling just nerves in the parking lot. But anxiety is a different beast. And I hope none of you have to experience it. But if you have, I hope this channel, can bring you some tools and relief to help overcome it. Because your heart, it's not just racing now. It feels like you're going to have a heart attack. And now you get all the same symptoms of a heart attack. You can't feel your left shoulder, and can't feel your legs, and my hands are shaking uncontrollably. Can't even get the ball on the tee. And it would be a miracle if I just made contact with the ball. And because of this, every shot feels like life or death. It feels so important, and every mistake feels permanent. And what frustrates you the most is I ended up hitting shots so far offline, they would go even right right of the houses. Houses were safe. My ball cleared them and went even further. And it's not because I didn't know how to swing or something was wrong. It's because fear had completely hijacked my attention, my focus, my confidence, and I wasn't reacting anymore. I was trying to control everything. And as you know, the more you control, actually the less control you have. One memory still sticks with me I'd like to share. I was playing a qualifying round with one of my teammates, and we were fighting for what had been the last travel spot for that tournament. And I remember feeling pretty good. I was actually playing solid, and we were walking down the fairway, and he said something to me. I'm not going to forget this. He looked at me and he said, "Hey, I don't think I'm supposed to tell you this, but I think Coach already put my name on the plane ticket." And I was like, whoa. I mean, this shocked me to my core. And to this day, I don't know if it was true. I don't know if maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. And honestly, it doesn't really matter, because as soon as those words entered my mind, I took it to storytelling land, and I ran with it. I left the golf course in my mind. Instead of seeing fairways, I started seeing failure. And instead of thinking about my next shot, I was imagining conversations that probably never even existed or have happened yet. Maybe Coach really doesn't believe in me, like so much that he booked a plane ticket for someone else. Maybe I've already lost my chance. Maybe none of this even matters. And the amazing thing about the brain, I'm sure you know, is that you can convince yourself something is real when nothing actually is. And that's exactly what happened to me. Of course, as you'd imagine, I finished the round poorly. And looking back at the round, it had nothing to do with golf. It had everything to do with my attention, my mental focus, my mental toughness. And even though my body was still on the course, my mind was off in fairy tale land. So over 4 years, I never cracked a starting five. I traveled as an individual, when there was an extra spot to play in that tournament, I practiced, I worked, I improved, but I never became the player I believed I could be or should be. I'm sure a lot of you have those feelings of shoulds and woulds, but it hurt. Oh, it hurt bad. And there were a lot of tears following poor performances. You can ask my wife about that, but it wasn't because I thought I deserved anything. It was because I knew there was a version of me that no one got to see, and I didn't get to experience. I knew, and I wanted that experience. For a long time, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I just wasn't mentally tough enough. Maybe some people have it, some people don't. Maybe everyone else had something that I didn't, and maybe I just wasn't built to handle pressure. But years later, I realized I'd been asking the wrong questions. The question isn't why am I nervous? The question is, what am I making this moment mean? Because every time I teed it up, I wasn't trying to play great golf. I was trying to, one, prove I was good enough, and two, try not to mess up. And if your self-worth is on the line, which mine was, pressure becomes overwhelming, and it's like trying to perform well with a gun to your head. And if you hit a good shot, you live. If you don't, you die. And that's a lot of us. So if you can relate, let me know and we'll work on it together. But that's a game nobody wins. And by the time I graduated, I left college with something is much heavier than disappointment. I left believing that I missed my chance. And for a while, I believed that story, and I put my clubs in the garage, and I started building a different life, a life that I didn't necessarily choose and more fell into. And I told myself it was time to move on. But, deep down, there was one question that refused to leave me alone. It kept coming back and coming back. And what if this wasn't the end of my story? For a long time, I thought walking away from golf meant that, big old failure. And I thought the dream was over, but just needed some time to understand what was actually holding me back. Time away can help you with that. And after college, I went into real estate, and honestly, it was okay. It was usually nobody's dream job, and I learned a lot. I met some great people, but there was always this feeling in the back of my mind, a question I couldn't get rid of, and it's like, what if? What if? And what if I had actually learned how to handle the pressure? And what if my mind didn't control me? What if I gave golf one more chance and showed you guys, what it takes, and honestly to help you at the same time is the whole point of the channel. I want to help you guys, figure out what I'm trying to figure out right now, and to teach other people how to move through these feelings and to believe in themselves. While I was moving away from competitive golf, I was actually moving closer to understanding performance, because here's the kicker: my entire life, mental performance, it was always there. It was always around me. My dad is a sports psychologist, and he's a good one. He worked with athletes from all different levels: college teams, national teams, professional teams. He was Team USA's sports psychologist for bowling, of all things. And growing up, I was exposed to conversations that most athletes don't even hear. I learned about confidence, I learned about focus, I learned about handling pressure, I learned about the mental side of performance. And as you can already see, the irony is I was probably the one athlete who needed these things the most. And I was also the athlete who was least ready to listen, because I don't know, you guys all have dads. When they tell you to do something, you're like, bug off, because I don't want to hear what you have to say. But, his advice still trickled in sometimes, and I didn't want to hear it. And I thought I knew it, but understanding something intellectually and then trying it when your heart is racing, and after not practicing these things, they're completely different. And the hardest part was watching my dad. He was helping some of the best athletes in the world, people you see on TV, and these people were winning and they were transforming, and watching them become more confident, and then looking at myself thinking, geez, it's just another drop in the bucket. Like, I'm not good enough. Why can't I do this? I guess I'm just not born with the thing. And why am I struggling with the exact thing my family has spent years helping people overcome? And for a while, I mean, it's still embarrassing. It's like I felt like maybe maybe there's just something wrong with me. And eventually, I'm realizing, and I have realized something important. And knowing the path, doesn't mean that you've walked the path. And I know the things that I have needed to do in the past, and I didn't do them. And that's why I'm starting this channel, because I don't want to sit here and pretend I've got everything figured out, because guess what? I don't. I still feel anxiety. I still feel pressure. Um, I still have moments where my old patterns show up. And the difference now is I understand what's happening, and I'm putting into practice. Here's the big thing: I'm practicing what I should be doing. And I know how to work through it. And we're going to experience it together as we work through it in real time. And, golf wasn't the only source of anxiety for me. Outside of my life, outside of golf, I was panicky, I'm anxious. There were moments where panic would show up for seemingly no reason. If any of you have had a panic attack, you're like, oh, I guess I'm dying. And that's where my brain would convince me about, something terrible was about to happen. I couldn't even drive from, the 30-minute drive from Reno to Truckee where I live. I was afraid of getting stuck in the mountains and dying and no one finding me. And or even had moments in the grocery store, where it was like, I have to leave early because I'm not doing well. And if you've experienced this, you know that how confusing. I mean, it's just so freaking confusing, because part of you knows that the fear doesn't make any sense, but another part of you like, well, but maybe that 1 out of 100 this is happening. So now I'm putting it to the test, not in a controlled environment, not in a classroom, but it's on the golf course. I mean, that's where golf course shows you your insecurities real fast, and it's where the results are public, where the pressure is real, where I can't hide. And the goal is simple. I'm going to chase the highest level of golf that I can. Some external goals: I want to play in the US Amateur or the Mid Am, and maybe someday down the road a Corn Ferry event, or maybe even a PGA Tour event, or maybe that new YGT Tour. Who knows? Maybe the journey takes me somewhere I can't even imagine right now. But I want to find out, and I want to find out with you, and help you and help myself along the way. And this is where you come in, because this isn't just my golf journey. This is an experiment. Can the mind actually be trained? Can someone change their identity? Can I go from not believing to believing? Can someone go from playing scared to playing free? This channel isn't just for golfers. It's for anybody, everybody who wants to make their belief system, wants to change it, change it for the better and become the person that you want to be. I want to change not only my life, which I really do, but I want to change yours as well through this. That's my goal of the channel, is like, I'm going to document the process, the good rounds, the bad rounds, the pressure moments, the failures, the breakthroughs, and guess what? The breakdowns, everything. Every episode, we're going to look at more than just score. We're going to look at the mental game. What did I feel? What did I learn? What worked? What didn't? Because I believe the biggest improvements in golf and in life, they come from understanding ourselves better. For most of my life, I needed to prove that I belonged. I'm probably going to battle a little bit of that through this channel, and I needed to prove I was talented enough and or good enough, and I know that's been the problem all along. But maybe the goal isn't proving who I am. The goal is becoming who I'm capable of becoming, and capable of what you're becoming. So this is the beginning. 30-year-old former college bench warmer who never reached his potential, betting everything on one thing that held me back: my mind. I don't know where this is going or where it ends. For the first time, I'm not afraid to find out. Actually, I'm really afraid.